Hello everyone and welcome to another video from the DCGist. In this video we will be looking at output 5, the hard copy outputs from Solidworks of your part A. In particular, what we'll be looking at is the output 5 requirements, choosing the best views of your artifact to put into output 5, explanation of the views that are required, the page format that you will have for your page in output 5, and laying out that page in the end. So first of all, we'll have a look at the marking scheme for output 5, and as you'll see, it's split up in a very similar way to output 1 and output 2, in that there are 5 different sets of criteria, and there are 2 in each one. The first one being your criteria, so your range of criteria considered, which gets you 13 marks. And the second one then being for your presentation, which gets you the 2 marks, so in the first one up to 15. So it's 2 marks for presentation, okay? And that's the same all the way down through the marking scheme, okay? In that then, for the hard copy outputs from Solidworks, you'll see that there are a number of criteria in here that you need to fulfill, but I'll be looking at that in the next part of the video. The marks then for output 5 are 15, okay, so it's 15 for your output 5, and there are 2 pages. Okay, now as I said in the output 4 video, this is where you show the Solidworks model in your actual portfolio. So there were no pages for output 4, but in output 5 there are 2, and that is the way of showing your Solidworks model. Then the overall percentage of the student assignment marks going for output 4 is 9.4%. Let's have a look at the output 5 requirements in more detail. So the first one is we need to have detailed orthographic views of the selected artifacts. So orthographic views, that's your elevation, your plan, and your end view. The second one then is we have to have sectional views and detail views where appropriate, and I will talk about where is appropriate later on in the video. We need to have rendered pictorial view of the assembly. We need to have an exploded view of the CAD model, and then we have to include the main dimensions, notes, and symbols for any of the views that we put in. Okay, in terms of main dimensions, they'll mostly be put in the orthographic views, but we could also put them in the exploded views as well. Okay, and then the notes, every view that you put in, you're going to have annotation, and any symbols we'll be putting into the sheet format as well. Then the number 6 then is we have to have appropriate scaling. So that's just about making sure that our views are to the right size and that one doesn't look absolutely huge compared to another one, but also that you lay them out well enough that you can see all the aspects of your model that you want to show in the space that you have provided, which is 2A3 sheets. Then the final thing is effective layout and presentation. So again, like in the other requirements, we have to make sure that we lay out our views well, and we want to make sure that we present it as well as we possibly can as well. Now that we know what is required in output 5, we can now look at where we're going to put all of those required views. Now, I've laid them out in this way because I find that this is the best way that they fit onto the sheets, but you could move them around so long as you have all of the views in your 2 pages. So on page 1, I tend to put the detailed orthographic views, a sectional view, an exploded view, and then some detailed views. Then on page 2, I get my students to do the render pictorial view, then some more detailed views, and rendered pictorial views of the most interesting parts. So they are parts rather than the assembly, okay? Or alternatively sub-assemblies where you hide some of the assembly but only show some of it. And the important thing on these 2 pages is that you don't have any white space, okay? You're trying to fill up these pages. You don't have that much space, so you want to fill it up with views to show off your model as well as you can. Now that we know what views are required, it's now important to plan our output 5 so that we show all of the aspects of our Solidworks model that we want to show in the best way possible. So sometimes the best way to show off one of your aspects might be a detailed view, but another time it might be a sectional view, and it's important to plan it out before you do it. So the first thing you need to do is to write a list of the artifact details you want to show. So there'll be some bits that you're really proud of that you really want to show off, and there'll be some bits that you mightn't be quite as proud of, so you mightn't put views of those if you can avoid it. And once you have that, you can then start to decide where you're going to put everything. So are you going to show some things in your orthographic views? You're going to show them in details? Are you going to show them in the exploded view, and so on? Now, what's important is that you need to refer to the 6 comparison headings that you had from output 2 in this sheet. Okay, so all of the different headings and all of the things that you said about your artifact that you were comparing, you need to refer to those in this output. Okay, and you'll be referring to that in the type of artifact details that you show, but also in the annotation of those. Okay, you'll be making sure to say that this view shows such and such a thing, which I looked at in output 2. Then you're going to choose the best views to show the above. So once you've written your list of details you want to show and made sure that you've taken into account your 6 comparison headings, then you're going to choose which type of views show off the 2 of those the best. So you'll make sure that you choose the best views to show off your chosen details that you'll decide above. Then finally, you need to create the display states and the configurations for those chosen views. So once you've decided the views, you then have to make sure that you're ready to create them on your sheet. And you'll do that using display states and using configurations, which you'll see in another video on my channel. Then once you've chosen your views, you then need to think about what annotation you're going to put into those views. And the annotation is just as important as the views themselves, because they explain to the person looking at your portfolio what it is you're trying to show them and also what it is that you think is important. So when you're doing that, you're always going to put in the type of view directly underneath the view. So if it's an elevation, you'll write elevation. If it's a detail view, you'll write detail. Exploded view, you'll write exploded underneath it. Then the second thing is you're going to use arrow annotation to justify your chosen artifact detail and view by explaining the following 3 things. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, what is the view showing? The second thing is, why is the detail that you're showing in the view important? Okay, that's really, really important, because if you're putting in just anything without explaining why it is that you're putting it in, you won't get all of the marks for it. And then the third thing then is, how does show an artifact detail links to the points made in previous outputs? Okay, always we are looking back at outputs that we've done before, because the outputs we've done before has influenced our thinking. Okay, and in particular with those previous outputs, we need to look in particular at output 2. Okay, if you look at your comparison headings and you've chosen your views from those 6 comparison headings, you're going to make sure to put those into your annotation for each one of those views. Okay, and if you do that, you'll get the full marks for your annotation and for your views. So now we'll have a look at the different views that are required and what the characteristics of each one of them are. So the first one here are the detailed orthographic views. Okay, so the first thing just to say about these is that we have a plan, we have an elevation, and we have an end view. This can be in third angle projection or first angle, okay, depending on what shows off your model the best and also what helps you to fit in the views that you want to show. So here we have third angle, in which the plan is above, but if you had first angle, it would be below, and that can just help in making sure that you have enough room to fit in all of your views onto your first sheet. Then we have to make sure that we put in the key dimensions. So you'll see here there are the key dimensions in this view. You could probably put a few more than this student has in, but you're not putting in absolutely everything. Okay, just the biggest dimensions that you would need to work on this model. Then the important thing is that this view is not rendered. Okay, it's just in lines and no hidden detail. Okay, if you want to show things that are behind things or different parts of your model that are inside, you're going to do that using a sectional view, not using hidden detail. If you put in hidden detail, it can mean that there's an awful lot of lines in your plan, your elevation, and your end view, and it can be very hard to read. Okay, so try to avoid putting hidden detail into your orthographic views. Then you're going to also make sure to label your views, as I said before, so your plan, your elevation, and your end view. so that you're showing the examiner that you know exactly what it is that you're drawing. The next view we'll look at then is the render pictorial view. Now, when it comes to the render pictorial view, it's important that you have it big enough on your sheet that it is really clear to the person looking at it, but also that you choose the right angle of it. And what's going to really affect that is when you create your assembly is to make sure that you have your first part giving you the correct planes of reference, okay, so that you get the best render pictorial view. That will also affect your orthographic views as well. So the choosing of the first part to put into your assembly is really important, which I said in the Output 4 video. The key points then of the render pictorial view is that you want it to either be isometric, dimetric, or trimetric. Okay, it doesn't matter which one it is. Choose the one that best shows off your model. The second thing then is that it needs to be rendered, and that rendering needs to be shaded with edges. Then you want to have the tangent edges removed, okay, and that's just so that it looks nice. Okay, it looks better if you have the tangent edges removed. And you have to make sure to have your annotation. So as I said earlier, the annotation needs to label what the view is. It needs to explain why it is that you have this view and what it is that it's showing. Okay, I know the reason that you have the render pictorial view is because it's a requirement, but you need to come up with a reason as to why exactly it is a good view to put in, and it needs to be showing something that you value in your model. Moving on to the next view then, and we have the exploded view. Now, the exploded view is going to be created in a configuration in your assembly, which you'll be able to see in one of my other videos on the YouTube channel. But the few important things about it is that it can be in many different views that you show the exploded view. So it can be isometric, it can be dimetric or trimetric, just like the render pictorial view, or it can be in an elevation. Okay, and you'll see the two different ones here. So here we have it as a pictorial view. Okay, so we have pictorial over here, and over here we have it as an elevation. Okay, now, so choosing which one you want to use in your Output 5 all depends on what it is that you want to show. Okay, so the student here wanted to show something particularly different to what the person over here wanted to show, okay? And sometimes it can be as much as trying to do an exploded view of this torch over here would have been difficult because of the amount of parts in it. It just wouldn't have looked well in a pictorial view, whereas in this one there's not quite as many parts, so it explodes out quite nicely. Whereas here, this configuration looks a lot neater. Then you want to make sure that it's rendered and again shaded with edges, so the same as the render pictorial view. Then again you want to have the tangent edges removed, and again you need to have your annotation. And even though it is one of the required views, you do need to make sure that it's showing something important to you, okay? And you'll be able to find something about your model that is shown particularly well in the exploded view, so make sure that you tell the examiner what it is. Next up, we have our sectional view. Okay, we have two examples of it here. I showed this second example in particular because the student took a detail view from the sectional view, okay, showing something a little bit clearer that they wanted to show with lots of annotation. And that just shows that you can take your detail views from any of the other views, okay? And we'll look at details views later, but I thought this was a particularly nice detail view that was taken. In the sectional view then in particular, what we need to make sure is that it's an orthographic view. Okay, so it can be an elevation, a plan, or an end view. It can be rendered or not rendered depending on what it is that you want to show off. Okay, so if rendering it shows off the aspect you want to emphasize in the view, then render it. If it shows it off better not rendered, then don't render it. Again, annotation, okay, why is it that you're showing this view? What is it showing? Why is it important to your model? The final type of view then that you're going to put into your Output 5 are detail views, okay? Now you'll see a few examples of them here, and what detail views are just showing is they're showing a kind of a zoomed in version of your model of something that you want to show. So in this case, this student wanted to show the pouring mechanism for their smoothie maker. This student wanted to show off the button to switch it on. And this student wanted to show how their tap switched on and off. Okay. The key points for these detail views then is that they can be either isometric, dimetric, trimetric, or orthographic. Okay, depending on which way shows off the detail the best. They again can be rendered or not rendered. The annotation here is absolutely vital, okay? The annotation of your details is probably the most important annotation that you're going to put in, because when you put in a detail view, you're really trying to show something in particular off, and make sure that you're telling the person that's looking at your portfolio exactly what it is that you're trying to show. The detail views should be linked to the comparison headings in output 2, okay? So if you have a detail view put in, try your very best to have it referring to one of the comparison headings in output 2, okay? And where you'll show that is you'll show that in the annotation that you put in, okay? So these annotations should be referring to output 2, okay? These ones don't. These students wouldn't have gotten full marks for it, okay? You need to make sure to show those comparison headings in your output 2. Okay, now let's have a look at the page format that you're going to need to adhere to when laying out your output 5. So the first thing to note here is that you're going to need to have your border like you would on any drawing sheet. I would recommend putting in a title block such as this, the size of which is 10, 10, 10 and 10, okay? And then you have 40 and 40 across the top, okay? That's just my personal preference. If you do a different type of title block when you're drawing in class, by all means use a different type of title block there. One of the things that always gets printed out on your drawings is this part down here. So the Solidworks Education Edition for instructional use. It's important that you take that into account when you're putting your views onto the sheet, okay? This will go on top of anything in that bottom corner. So try to avoid putting anything into a box, something like this size down in the corner, okay? Just have your views away from that. Then in the marking scheme, it talks about symbols, okay? Now, these symbols have to do with whether or not you're using first angle projection or third angle projection in your output 5. Now, if you're using first angle, you will have this symbol. If you're having third angle, you will have this one. Now, the dimensions for those you will find in your textbook, but where you're going to put those is you're going to put them down here next to your title block, okay? So they'll go in a little box somewhere around here to show whether or not you're using first angle or third angle in this view, and that will go on both of your sheets. In your title block then, what I always ask my students to put in is to put in student assignment and the year, okay? So whatever year you're doing it, you put it in there. Then in this one, you'll write down exam number. In this one is where you will put your exam number, okay? Then you'll have your output 5 and page 1, page 2 for your second one. And then down in this one in the bottom, you'll have the name of your artifact. It might be the manufacturer that made it. It might be the name that the actual artifact has. The way that you make your page format then is in page format in Solidworks, but you'll be able to see a video on that on my channel if you're unsure. So here's my suggested layout for output 5 page 1. Again, as always, it's just a suggested layout. You can lay it out in any way that you like, but this layout fits everything in that we need and fits it in a nice concise way. So the first thing then is we have the orthographic views. Now these orthographic views are in a first angle projection, okay? So the plan will be down here, the elevation and the end view. But if it fits your pages better, you could have it in third angle, okay? In which case it will go up higher above rather than going down below the elevation and the end view. Then I have a sectional view here beside it, which will be taken from the orthographic views, okay? A sectional view has to be taken from a view that's already on your sheet. So this is a really good way of getting it in, okay? I then have one detail view over here to the side, and I would suggest taking that detail view from your sectional view, okay? So your sectional view is coming from something you want to show on the inside from your orthographic view, and then your detail view will be a zoomed in part of your sectional view, okay? Trying to show off your 6 comparison points from output 2. Then down here, this big box, we have an exploded view. The exploded view is always going to be quite large because everything is very spread out. Okay, so you'll need a lot of room for that exploded view and a detail view from that. So I have a detail view coming from that of something that you want to show off from that exploded view. Then you have the suggested layout for output 5 page 2, in which I put in over on the side here the rendered pictorial view. It's always a good idea to put big ones above the Solidworks branding because it uses the space more effectively. I then put in a detailed view from that, okay, so it'll be of something that's interesting in your pictorial view, and then a second detailed view again coming from your pictorial view. This second detailed view could also, if you wanted, come from one of your sub-assemblies, okay, and the same for the one over here. But again, it's down to whatever shows off your artifact the best. Then we have a sub-assembly or part view. Now what that means is a sub-assembly is showing part of your assembly but hiding a number of parts, okay, so you might have a few things that you want to show of your artifact. So for example, there might be a cover over the top. You could remove the cover and show the assembly that's happening on the inside. Okay? The part view then would be just taking one singular part and showing that. Okay, so I have two sub-assemblies or parts, and then I have one part. Now the reason that this is only part is because there's not much space left beside the title block. And a sub-assembly, you normally need a little bit of extra space, so this might just be a part view. And again, what these are all trying to show, especially these 5, they're trying to show the details that you think are the most important, but also referring to the 6 comparison headings that you used in output 2. And anywhere that you can refer to any of your other outputs, make sure that you do that in your annotation, because it shows that you're learning all the way through your assignment. That brings us to the end of this video on output 5. I really hope you enjoyed it and that the information in it is useful in completing your student assignment. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel to see more videos from the DCGist. You can also find more information at thedcgist.com, where you'll find videos, study guides, and some board drawing tips. You can also follow the DCGist on Twitter at the DCGist, or on Facebook at facebook.com/thedcgist. Best of luck with your output 5, and I'll see you later.